The story begins on a quiet evening in a small, tight-knit town, nestled between green hills and distant mountains. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of fresh rain that had just fallen. The sky, painted in hues of orange and pink, bathed the town in a warm glow. A low hum of life filled the streets, children playing near the park, couples walking hand in hand, and shopkeepers closing up for the night. The kind of peaceful calm that seemed to promise nothing but tranquility. At the edge of town stood the prison, a looming structure hidden behind tall iron gates and barbed wire fences. Its walls were cold and gray, contrasting the warm hues of the town. Inside, the sound of chains rattled, voices echoed down the long corridors, and the constant hum of the security system filled the silence between moments of interaction. The prison, just like the town outside, had its own rhythm, a pace that those within had become accustomed to, a life bound by routines and secrets. Elena sat in the living room of her modest home, nestled near the outskirts of town. Her eyes were fixed on the clock, her mind racing. She had been waiting for an hour, and yet she couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something was amiss. The house was silent, except for the occasional sound of the wind rattling the window panes. She glanced over at the framed photo on the mantel, her husband, James, standing tall in a suit, with a smile that had once been her world. Now, that smile felt hollow. James had been gone for nearly a year, sent away to prison for a crime that had rocked the town. The shock had been unbearable. No one had seen it coming. He had always been the loving husband, the quiet man who kept to himself. How could he have committed such an act? Elena had tried to move on, tried to accept the emptiness that had crept into her life since that fateful day, but the house felt too large, too silent. And the letters, oh, the letters. They had stopped coming months ago. The once regular communication between her and James had withered to nothing. What was happening behind those walls? Did he still care? Was he truly the man she thought he was? As Elena sat there, her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Her heart skipped a beat. It was too late for visitors. She stood, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for the door. There, standing in the dim light of the porch, was a man she didn't recognize, dressed in a prison guard uniform. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those eyes, held a flicker of something dark. His name was Marcus, a name she would come to know all too well in the coming weeks. "I'm sorry to disturb you, ma'am," he said, his voice calm, but there was a hint of something more beneath the surface. "I've come to deliver a message." Elena stepped back, instinctively wary. "What message?" He hesitated, then handed her a sealed envelope. "Your husband has asked that I personally deliver this." Elena's heart pounded in her chest as she took the envelope from him, her fingers brushing against his for a brief moment. A shiver ran down her spine. "I'll be on my way," Marcus said, stepping back into the night before she could respond. Elena stood there, frozen for a moment, before she turned and entered the house. The letter was short, the handwriting familiar. She had to blink several times before the words made sense. The message was simple, but its implications were far from it. "Meet me at the old barn. Midnight. Don't tell anyone. It's important. Trust me." James. Her mind raced. Why hadn't he told her what it was about? What was he involved in? And why now, after so long without a word? The night dragged on. The tension in Elena's chest tightened as the hour of midnight approached. She couldn't ignore the unease gnawing at her. Something was happening, something that would change everything. There were too many unanswered questions. She grabbed her coat, slipped out into the cool night air, and drove toward the barn. The path leading to the barn was familiar to her, but tonight it felt different. The shadows seemed to stretch farther than before, as if they were hiding something. As she approached, she saw him standing there, James. But there was something wrong about him, something off. His face, once familiar, now looked worn, aged by the time in prison. His eyes, once warm and full of love, were now hard and distant. He was waiting, and yet there was no welcoming smile, no embrace. His posture was tense, and his eyes flickered nervously over his shoulder. "Elena," he greeted her, his voice distant. "You came. I came. What is this? What's going on? Why didn't you write?" He sighed, his gaze dropping to the ground for a moment. "I didn't want you involved. I didn't want to drag you into this mess." "What mess?" she asked, her voice trembling. He looked up at her then, and for a moment there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Regret, perhaps. "I made a deal," he confessed, his words low and quick. "A deal that's going to get me out of here, but it's dangerous, and I need you to trust me. I'm going to escape, Elena, with Marcus's help." Her heart sank. The words felt like a punch to the gut. She couldn't breathe. "Escape?" she whispered, horrified. "You're planning to break out?" James nodded. "It's the only way out, and I'm not going to sit here and rot. Marcus is helping me, but I need you to be ready. When the time comes, we'll be together again. No one can stop us." Elena stood there, her mind racing. She couldn't wrap her head around it. The man she had loved, the man she had thought was innocent, was making plans to escape from prison with a guard who had been sneaking around in her life. There was no turning back now. The plans were set into motion, and as they whispered there, final words in the shadows of the barn, Elena was left to wonder how far she would go to help him escape the very life she had fought to rebuild.